Alex had never expected his life to change after receiving an unexpected letter. The envelope was sleek, its surface embossed with strange symbols that glowed faintly under the light. It had arrived one ordinary morning, slipped through his door. By a messenger he'd never seen before. He looked at the letter in his hands, puzzled and slightly nervous. The invitation read, "To Alex, an honored guest at the royal wedding of Princess Lyra of Xantar, on the planet Xantar." At first, Alex thought it was some sort of joke. He lived in a small town on Earth, far removed from galactic politics or alien royalty. Guy with a normal job working in IT, spending most of his days in front of a computer screen. But the more he thought about it, the more it piqued his curiosity. He'd read about the alien races that had joined the Galactic Alliance, about their cultures and their worlds. Xantara was known for its beauty-lush forests, its advanced cities floating in the sky, and starry skies that stretched for what seemed like forever. It's a chance to visit such a place, even as a guest at a wedding, something no one in his world could have ever imagined. As strange as it seemed, Alex couldn't resist the invitation. What was the harm in attending a wedding? It would be an adventure, something beyond the ordinary. After all, this was an opportunity most people could only dream of. A week later, after confirming his attendance through the channels provided in the letter, Alex found himself boarding a sleek silver ship that hummed with quiet power. The craft was far more advanced than any Earth vehicle he'd ever seen. The interior was comfortable and elegant, filled with soft lighting and strange holographic displays. Alex, who had never been out of the Earth's atmosphere, was both excited and nervous. He couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. The journey took a few days, and during that time, Alex spent much of it staring out the window at the endless stars. He had always been fascinated by space, but nothing compared to the view he had now. He thought about his life back home, the friends, the quiet days at his desk, and realized how much he had longed for something more. This journey felt like the start of something important. When they finally arrived on Xantara, Alex was stunned. The planet was nothing like he had imagined. As the ship descended into the atmosphere, he could see cities with towers that reached into the clouds, shining with lights that flickered like stars. There were floating islands, with bridges connecting them in the sky, and enormous gardens filled with alien plants and flowers. The planet seemed alive in a way that Earth never had. A grand procession awaited the guests at the spaceport, with aliens of all shapes, colors, and sizes standing in line to welcome the visitors. Alex stood out among the crowd, a human in a sea of beings from different worlds. He had always thought of himself as a bit of a loner, but in this moment, felt strangely at home. He was escorted to the royal palace where the wedding would take place. The palace was a stunning blend of nature and technology, with glass walls that allowed views of the city and the sky. Gardens surrounded the building, with flowers that glowed softly in the dark and trees that seemed to hum with energy. The air was filled with the scent of something both foreign and familiar, sweet but sharp. As Alex entered the palace, he was greeted by the sight of the royal court. Aliens dressed in elaborate robes stood talking and laughing, some with multiple arms, others with shimmering skin. There were tall beings with long flowing hair, short beings with fur, and even some that seemed to have no visible form at all, their bodies made of light. And as he sat down, his eyes were drawn to the front of the room where the bride stood. Princess Lyra was beautiful beyond words, her alien features radiant in the soft light of the palace. Her eyes were the color of the stars, a deep, shining blue that seemed to see right through him. Her long, silver hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her dress shimmered like liquid starlight. The ceremony began. Alex couldn't help but feel like he was watching something from a dream. There were strange songs sung by the guests, alien instruments playing melodies that seemed to echo across the room, and light shows that danced around the couple. The entire event was surreal, as if time had stopped and everything was focused on this moment of unity between two worlds. Alex tried to keep his thoughts focused, but he couldn't help but wonder about the significance of it all. He was just a human, an outsider. He had no idea why he was here, let alone why he was attending the wedding of a royal family. But as he looked around, he realized that the whole world of Zantara was watching this event, the union of two people from vastly different backgrounds, and of the hope that all species, no matter how different, could come together. As the ceremony continued, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was happening. He had come as a guest, a simple observer, but already he could feel his life shifting. He glanced at Princess Lyra again, and their eyes met for the briefest of moments. She gave him a soft smile, and for the first time since arriving on the planet, Alex felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The rest of the ceremony went by in a blur, and when it was finally over, Alex found himself swept into the reception. The guests mingled, enjoying food from every corner of the galaxy. Alex spoke with several aliens, sharing stories and learning about their worlds. He was fascinated by their cultures and their unique ways of thinking. But amidst the laughter and chatter, his mind kept returning to Princess Lyra. There was something about her, something that called to him in a way he couldn't explain. Little did Alex know. The simple invitation to a wedding would be the beginning of an adventure that would change the course of his life forever. He had attended as a guest, but he was about to become much more than a mere. Alex stood at the edge of the grand hall, his eyes wide as he took in the sight before him. The alien wedding ceremony was unlike anything he had ever seen. The palace's walls were made of transparent material, allowing the soft light of the twin suns to pour into the hall. Outside, he could see floating islands suspended in the sky, their trees swaying gently in the breeze, while inside, the entire room shimmered with otherworldly energy. There were long tables covered in exotic fruits and delicacies from distant planets, and in the center of the hall, a large stage had been set up for the ceremony. He had always heard stories about alien weddings, but nothing could have prepared him for the true spectacle. The guests, a mixture of aliens from various species, were all dressed in extravagant robes and garments. Some were humanoid, with smooth skin and colors ranging from deep purple to bright green, while others had more animalistic features, with fur, scales, or multiple limbs. They all mingled and laughed, speaking in languages Alex couldn't understand. Yet there was an unspoken sense of unity in the room, despite their differences. They were all here for one reason, to witness the union of two important figures. At the front of the room, Alex saw the bride-to-be. Princess Lyra stood with an elegance that took his breath away. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, shimmering in the light like strands of pure moonlight. She wore a gown made of shimmering fabric that seemed to change color as it caught the light. Her dress sparkled like stardust, and Alex couldn't help but admire her beauty. But it wasn't just her appearance. There was something in her presence that made her stand out even more. Her calm, regal demeanor, the way she carried herself, made it clear that she was not just any ordinary princess. As the ceremony began, Alex found himself mesmerized. The music started, a haunting melody that echoed through the hall, played by an orchestra of alien musicians. The instruments were unlike anything Alex had ever heard. Some sounded like wind chimes, while others emitted low, vibrating tones that seemed to resonate deep within his chest. The music was ethereal, and it seemed to transport everyone in the room to another place. One filled with magic and wonder. The wedding vows were exchanged in a language Alex couldn't understand, but the emotion in the voices of the bride and groom was undeniable. The groom, an alien prince from a neighboring planet, was tall and strong, his dark green skin glistening under the light. His features were sharp and angular, and his eyes were a deep red, almost glowing with intensity. As he took the hand of Princess Lyra, their bond seemed to radiate out from them like a visible force. Alex watched in awe as the couple exchanged rings made of a shimmering metal that pulsed with energy. As the ceremony continued, Alex's attention wandered, and he found himself looking around at the guests. There was a sense of awe in the air, a feeling of reverence as the vows were being made. Everyone stood silently, their eyes fixed on the couple. The alien culture was clearly one of respect and honor, and Alex couldn't help but feel out of place. He was just a human, standing among these magnificent beings, sure of why he had been invited in the first place. It was during this moment of contemplation that Alex's gaze returned to the bride. Princess Lyra had caught his eye again, and this time their eyes locked. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow down. Her deep blue eyes sparkled with an emotion that Alex couldn't quite read, but it felt like she was looking at him in a way that no one else had. He quickly looked away, unsure of what to make of the connection he felt. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination or something more, but he could sense that there was something deeper at play. The ceremony progressed with the exchanging of gifts. The prince gave Lyra a necklace made of rare stones that glowed with a soft, pulsing light. The princess, in turn, handed the prince a bracelet crafted from the finest metals, its design intricate and beautiful. As they exchanged these tokens, the room erupted in applause, and the energy in the hall seemed to rise, as if the whole universe had come together to witness this special moment. Just as the couple was about to share their first kiss as husband and wife, something unexpected happened. A slight disturbance rippled through the crowd, drawing Alex's attention. He turned to see a group of dignitaries from another planet entering the hall. They were tall, their skin a deep shade of blue, and their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. They moved with a sense of purpose, as if they were accustomed to commanding attention. The new arrivals caused a ripple of whispers to spread through the crowd, and for a moment Alex wondered if something was wrong. But before he could think further, the focus of the ceremony shifted back to the couple. The prince and princess kissed, sealing their vows, and the room erupted in applause once more. The crowd cheered, and the music swelled, filling the hall. With joy and excitement, Alex found himself caught up in the moment, clapping along with everyone else. He watched as the newlywed couple turned to face their guests, smiling with happiness and pride. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and celebration. And despite feeling like an outsider, Alex couldn't help but smile as the ceremony came to a close. The guests were invited to the reception, where food and drinks from across the galaxy were served. Alex was ushered into the grand banquet hall, where tables were covered with exotic dishes and delicacies. He was introduced to several important alien figures, including the king himself, who smiled warmly at him but said little. Alex, though, out of his depth, couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. This was a world far beyond anything he had ever known. As the evening wore on, Alex found himself walking through the palace gardens, trying to process everything that had happened. The stars above twinkled brightly, and the air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of alien flowers. He paused for a moment, taking in the beauty of the world around him. He had come to this planet as a curious guest, never imagining that he would be so deeply immersed in such an extraordinary world. Unbeknownst to him, Princess Lyra was nearby, watching him from a distance. Their paths were about to cross again. But neither of them knew that this night would be the beginning of a journey neither of them could have ever. Alex had been walking through the garden, lost in thought, when he felt a soft hand gently touch his arm. He turned quickly, startled, only to find himself face to face with Princess Lyra. She looked even more stunning up close, her silver hair gleaming in the soft light of the moons above. She smiled warmly at him, and for a moment, Alex forgot to speak. "Would you mind walking with me?" Lyra asked, her voice soft and inviting. Alex hesitated, but there was something about her that made him feel both comfortable and anxious at the same time. After a brief pause, he nodded, a little unsure but curious. "Of course," he replied, his voice a little unsteady. As they walked together through the palace garden, Alex found himself drawn into her presence. They passed by large trees with strange glowing flowers, and the air was filled with a soft, melodic hum that seemed to come from the plants themselves. Lyra led him down a path lined with shimmering stones and the quiet sounds of the wedding. Festivities seemed to fade away as they ventured deeper into the peaceful garden. Lyra didn't say much at first, but Alex could tell that something was on her mind. Finally, she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "No, you must be wondering why. I asked you to walk with me," she began, looking at the ground before meeting his gaze. "It's just... yeah. There's something about you that feels different from the others. I can't explain it, but I feel... drawn to you." Alex was taken aback by her words. He had no idea how to respond. The last thing he expected was to be having such an intimate conversation with a royal princess. God. He tried to find the right words, but his mind was a whirlwind of confusion. I don't know what to say, Alex said, his voice quiet. I'm just an ordinary guy. I don't even know why I'm here. It's all been so... overwhelming. Lyra smiled at him, her eyes softening. You're not like the others, Alex, she said, her voice full of warmth. You're not here because of some political alliance or because you have a title. You're here because you were invited as a guest. Because you have a different perspective. I find that refreshing. Alex didn't know what to say. He had never considered himself anything special, and yet here he was, standing in a beautiful alien garden, speaking to a princess who seemed to see something in him that he didn't see in himself. Before he could respond, there was a sudden noise in the distance. A loud voice called out from the direction of the wedding hall, and Lyra quickly turned her head to look back. Alex followed her gaze and saw a group of royal attendants rushing toward them. It seemed that something was happening, something urgent. Please excuse me, Alex, Lyra said, her tone suddenly serious. I must go. There's something I need to attend to. Before Alex could ask what was happening, Lyra turned and walked swiftly back toward the palace. He stood there for a moment, feeling a strange mix of confusion and disappointment. He had thought they were starting to connect, but now she was leaving so suddenly. What had just happened? He didn't have time to dwell on it, though. He could feel the energy in the air shift as more people began to gather around the palace, all looking in the direction of the wedding hall. The atmosphere seemed charged with tension, but no one would explain what was going on. The music had stopped, and the quiet whispers of the guests were filled with a sense of urgency. As Alex made his way back toward the banquet hall, a young servant appeared at his side, bowing respectfully. Sir, you've been invited to join the dance, the servant said, gesturing toward the grand hall. It is a tradition for the honored guests to participate. The prince has requested it. The mention of the prince made Alex nervous. He had already been surrounded by so many powerful figures, but this felt different. He wasn't a dancer, and the idea of performing in front of so many strangers, especially with a prince, was enough to make him break into a cold sweat. I don't know if I'm the right person for this, Alex stammered. The servant smiled gently. It is not a difficult task. The dance is meant to be symbolic. Just follow the steps, and you will be fine. The prince himself has asked for you. Alex's heart skipped a beat. The prince. Why would the prince want him to dance? This had to be some kind of mistake. Reluctantly, Alex followed the servant into the hall. He could see the prince now, standing tall at the center of the room, surrounded by a group of well-dressed aliens. The prince's gaze flicked over the crowd, and for some reason, it landed directly on Alex. Before Alex could even think to move, the prince walked toward him, his confident stride making the room go quiet. The prince's deep red eyes locked onto Alex's, and a strange silence filled the space between them. You will dance with my bride, the prince said, his voice commanding yet smooth. It is the tradition, a dance of unity. Alex stood frozen for a moment, completely unsure of how to respond. But the prince wasn't waiting for a reply. He took Alex's arm and led him to the center of the hall. Alex could hear the whispers of the crowd around them, their voices full of curiosity. As the music started again, the prince handed Alex a delicate, glowing instrument that seemed to hum in his hand. It was clear that this was no ordinary dance. Alex had no idea what he was supposed to do, but he was certain of one thing: he was in way over his head. The dance began slowly, the steps gentle and synchronized with the soft melody that filled the hall. For a moment, Alex tried to follow the prince's lead, but everything felt wrong. The steps were unlike any dance he had ever seen, and he couldn't keep up. Then, just as he was about to stumble, a soft hand reached out to steady him. It was Princess Lyra. Don't worry, she whispered, stepping into the circle and taking his hand. I'll help you. The room seemed to hold its breath as the princess took Alex's other hand, guiding him with a grace that Alex could never have expected. The moment their hands touched, a strange energy passed between them, something neither of them could explain. And so Alex found himself dancing with Princess Lyra as the guests watched in stunned silence. The accidental mix-up had led him to this moment, and he couldn't help but wonder if it was only the beginning of something far more significant. This part continues to build the intrigue and connection between Alex and Princess Lyra, creating a mix of tension and curiosity. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments, asked Chet. The dance was unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. As he moved with Princess Lyra, his mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened since he'd arrived on Xantara. One moment, he was a quiet observer at an alien wedding, and now he was in the center of it all, holding the hand of a princess who seemed to be more than just a royal figure. She was someone with hopes, dreams, and fears just like him. Yet there was a weight in her eyes, a sadness that made Alex wonder if there was more to this story than he knew. The music flowed softly around them, a mix of delicate notes that resonated through the floor beneath his feet. Princess Lyra led him gracefully, her movements as fluid as water, her eyes never leaving his. Despite the intricate dance, Alex felt more connected to her than he ever thought possible. The other guests faded into the background, their whispers hushed as the prince and princess danced together. There was something electric in the air, tension between them that couldn't be ignored. As they continued to dance, Alex felt a strange, almost magnetic pull toward Lyra. He tried to focus, but his mind kept returning to the same thought. How had he ended up here? A simple human, thrown into the middle of an alien royal ceremony, dancing with the princess like it was the most natural thing in the world. When the music finally stopped, Lyra did not pull away from him. Instead, she looked up at him with a quiet intensity. There was a moment of silence between them where neither of them spoke. Alex was unsure of what to say. He had never been in a situation like this before. He was a guest at a royal event, and yet it felt as if he had a deeper connection to Lyra than just an accidental invitation. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the crowd. "You've made this night unforgettable." Alex's heart skipped a beat at her words. It wasn't just the way she had said them, but the look in her eyes. There was something in her gaze that made Alex feel both honored and uneasy at the same time. It was clear that Lyra wasn't like the others he had met. She wasn't simply playing a role as a princess. She was real, raw, and in that moment, vulnerable. Before he could respond, the prince's voice cut through the quiet. He was standing a few steps away, his expression unreadable as he watched the two of them closely. "Princess Lyra," the prince said, his tone formal, but with an edge of authority. "I believe it is time for you to join your family, the royal duties." "Oh, wait." Lyra hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. She glanced at Alex once more, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and something else, something Alex couldn't place. "Of course," she said, her voice steady, but there was an undeniable sadness behind it. She turned to leave, but before she did, she looked at Alex and whispered, "Please, stay close. There is much we need to discuss." Alex stood there for a moment, watching her walk away. The prince moved to join her, placing a firm hand on her back as they made their way toward the royal family. Alex's heart felt heavy as he watched them leave. He had no idea what had just happened, but it was clear that something between him and the princess had shifted. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was entangled in something far greater than himself. The evening continued, but Alex felt disconnected from the festivities. He walked through the grand hall, his mind racing, with thoughts of Lyra. What had she meant by her words? What was it that she wanted to talk about? He couldn't shake the feeling that he had crossed some invisible line, and now things were no longer simple. Later that night, as the banquet began, Alex found himself at a table filled with strangers, aliens. From all corners of the galaxy, each with their own culture and customs. They spoke in languages that Alex couldn't understand, but their laughter and conversations seemed distant. His mind kept wandering back to the dance, to the way Lyra had looked at him, and to the prince's cold stare. The prince, Alex didn't know much about him, but it was obvious that he wasn't someone to cross. The way he held Lyra's arm, the way he spoke to her, it was clear that their relationship was more than just royal duty. Alex couldn't help but feel a little jealous. He didn't belong in this world, but somehow he had found himself at the center of it. And the more he learned, the more he realized that his presence here was far from ordinary. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. As the night wore on, Alex grew more restless. He excused himself from the banquet table and wandered through the palace corridors, trying to clear his head. The palace was quieter now, the soft lights casting long shadows. On the walls, he was lost in thought when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned quickly and found himself face to face with Princess Lyra. She was alone, her expression more serious than he had seen before. "Alex," she said, her voice low, "I had to speak. With you, there's something you need to know." He looked at her, his heart racing. "What is it?" Lyra took a deep breath and looked around to make sure no one was listening. "I've been promised to the prince," she said softly. "It's been arranged for years. My father, he insists on it. But I don't want this. I don't want to marry someone I don't love." Alex felt his chest tighten at her words. He wanted to say something, to offer her comfort, but he didn't know what to say. He was just a human, a guest in this foreign world. What could he possibly offer her? Lyra continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I saw you tonight. I felt something I've never felt before. A connection. I can't explain it, but I have to be honest with you. I'm not sure where this will lead, but I can't pretend it doesn't matter. I can't marry the prince and live the life my father has planned for me." Alex was silent for a moment, trying to process her words. This was more than he had bargained for. He had come to this planet as a mere observer, but now he found himself caught in a web of royal politics and forbidden love. He didn't know how to respond. But one thing was clear. His life would never be the same again. This part deepens the emotional tension between Alex and Lyra while setting up the challenges they will face. Let me know if you'd like to make an... The next morning, Alex found himself feeling like he was in a dream that he couldn't wake up from. Princess Lyra's confession from the night before kept running through his mind. It felt like everything was shifting around him, as if he had crossed some invisible line, and now he wasn't sure where the path was leading. He hadn't come to Xantara expecting anything more than a brief adventure. But now, he was tangled in a situation far more complicated than he ever could have imagined. The royal palace was quiet in the early morning hours. The soft sounds of alien birds chirping outside the windows. Alex wandered through the halls, trying to shake the unease that had settled in his chest. He had been given a guest room near the royal wing, and though he knew his presence was a bit of a mystery too, the palace staff, they treated him with a quiet respect. Still, he felt like an outsider, unsure of his place in this strange world. Just as he was lost in thought, a servant came to find him. The woman was dressed in traditional Xantarian clothing, her face serene and calm as she bowed before him. "Prince." "Alex," she said softly, her voice respectful. "The king has requested your presence." Alex blinked in surprise. "The king? What does he want with me?" "I do not know, sir," the servant replied, her expression unreadable. "But he has insisted." The word prince hung in the air between them. It was still strange to hear himself addressed. That way, he wasn't a prince. He was just a man who had been caught up in a strange twist of fate. But here on Xantara, it seemed like titles were given as easily as breaths. Reluctantly, Alex followed the servant through the palace, his steps heavy with uncertainty. The further he walked, the more his mind raced. With him, Lyra had made it clear that her marriage to the prince was an arrangement, but had she spoken to her father about their connection? Alex couldn't imagine what kind of response she would receive if she did. The king was powerful, and the political pressures of his position were likely immense. Finally, they arrived at the royal chambers, a massive set of doors that opened into a grand hall filled with tapestries depicting the history of the Xantarian people. The walls were lined with golden statues, each one standing tall and proud. At the far end of the hall sat the king, a tall, imposing figure with dark blue skin and sharp, regal features. His eyes were the color of the deepest space, dark and unreadable. He was flanked by advisors and guards, his presence commanding respect from everyone in the room. As Alex entered, the king's eyes turned to him. The room fell into silence, and Alex couldn't help but feel small under the king's intense gaze. "You must be the human who has caused quite a stir," the king said in a deep voice, his tone both curious and stern. I didn't mean to cause." "Any trouble?" Alex replied, trying to steady his nerves. "I was just invited to the wedding." Yes, I know," the king interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. "Your presence here has stirred up more than just curiosity. It has sparked interest among many of my subjects. You are different. You are not like the other guests." Alex swallowed hard. He had no idea where this conversation was going, but it didn't sound good. The king leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Do you understand the importance of the situation you found yourself in, human?" His voice dropped, taking on a more serious tone. "My daughter, Princess Lyra, is bound by duty. She is the heir to the throne. Her marriage has been arranged for years, and it is essential for the future of our kingdom." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "I understand," he said, though he wasn't sure if he did. He hadn't asked for any of this. The connection he felt with Lyra was real, but it wasn't something he could change. He was just a man from Earth, thrust into a world he didn't fully understand. The king stood up, his presence filling the room. "Lyra may feel what she feels, but duty comes first," he said firmly. "She cannot afford to let her personal desires interfere with the fate of our people." Alex felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had seen the way Lyra had looked at him, how she had shared her fears and doubts about the marriage. She wasn't the cold, distant royal that everyone else seemed to expect. She was a woman with her own dreams, her own heart. "I don't want to stand in the way of your kingdom," Alex said quietly. "But Lyra and we have something. I can't explain it, but I can't ignore it either." The king's gaze grew even colder. But there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, something that Alex couldn't quite decipher. "You are naive," the king said, his voice low and dangerous. "You think that love can overcome all? Love cannot protect the future of my people. If you think that you can just waltz in here and change everything, you are gravely mistaken." Alex's pulse quickened. He could feel the weight of the king's words pressing down on him, but he stood his ground. "I'm not trying to change anything. I just want to understand where I stand in all of this." The king stared at him for a long moment, his eyes calculating. Finally, he spoke again, his tone softer, but still firm. "The situation is not as simple as you believe. You may be here as a guest, but you are not free from the consequences of your actions. Have caught the attention of many. And there are those who will not take kindly to a human being involved with my daughter." Alex didn't know what to say. The gravity of the situation was starting to sink in. He was just a man from Earth. He didn't belong in the world of politics and royal marriages. But something about Lyra kept drawing him in, making it impossible for him to walk away. The king's voice broke through his thoughts. "You will leave this palace, will go back to your home, and you will never see my daughter again." Alex's heart sank. "But you have no place here," the king cut him off. "Turn to your world. Forget about my daughter, for her sake and for yours." The weight of the king's decree hit Alex like a ton of bricks. He had no choice but to comply. But as he stood there looking at the king, he felt a sense of resolve settle within him. He couldn't just walk away. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. This part adds a layer of conflict and tension as Alex faces the king's decree. The emotional stakes are rising, and Alex must make a choice about his future. Let me know if you'd like any. Alex sat in his guest room, staring out of the large window that overlooked the alien city of Xantara. The city was bathed in the soft glow of the twin suns, and the sky above was a deep purple with hints of gold. But despite the beauty of the world around him, Alex felt like he was trapped in a storm. His mind raced with thoughts of what had just happened. The king's decree still echoed in his ears. He was to leave. He was not welcome here, and his connection with Princess Lyra was not enough to change the fate that had been set in motion. Long before he ever stepped foot on this planet, something inside Alex told him that leaving wasn't an option. He couldn't walk away from Lyra when she needed him the most. Alex stood up from the window, his decision made. He couldn't stay here in this room any longer, not while the most important part of his life was unfolding outside these walls. He had to find Lyra. He had to speak to her, no matter what the king had said. As he walked through the palace halls, the weight of the situation settled heavily on his shoulders. He knew what he was doing was dangerous. The king had made it clear that there would be consequences if Alex didn't follow his orders. But Alex also knew that if he left now, he would regret it forever. He reached the royal gardens, where he had first met Lyra. The air smelled of strange flowers, and the soft hum of energy filled the atmosphere. He walked along the path, his heart beating faster with every step. He had no idea where she was or how he would even find her, but he had to try. Just as he was about to give up and turn back, he saw her. Princess Lyra was standing near the edge of the garden, looking out at the distant hills. She looked beautiful as always, her silver hair flowing in the gentle breeze, her back straight and regal. But there was something in her posture that made Alex's heart ache. She looked so lonely. "Lyra," he called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned quickly, and for a moment her eyes were wide with surprise. But then she softened, and her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Alex stepped closer, careful not to startle her. "I couldn't leave," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I couldn't walk away from you, not after everything we've shared." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she didn't speak. She simply looked at him as if trying to understand what he was saying. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling. "You don't understand," she whispered. "My father, he has made it clear that this union is not just about us. It's about the future of my people. I have no choice, Alex. I have to marry the prince." Alex took a step forward, his heart aching at the pain in her voice. "You do have a choice," he said firmly. "You have the right to choose your own happiness. Your father doesn't get to decide who you marry, not if you don't want it." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of confusion and longing. "But if I don't marry him, it could tear the kingdom apart. People will lose faith in my family. They'll think I'm weak, unfit to rule." Alex shook his head. "No, Lyra, you're strong, stronger than anyone I've ever met. You deserve a chance to live your life the way you want, not the way someone else tells you to." There was a long silence between them. The tension in the air was thick, but Alex could feel Lyra's resolve slowly shifting. She reached out and took his hand, the warmth of her touch grounding him. "Alex," she said quietly, "what if I can't have both? What if the only way to keep my kingdom safe is to marry the prince?" Alex gently squeezed her hand. "We'll find a way. Together. I won't let you go through this alone. I don't know how we'll make it work, but I know we can. You're not just a princess, Lyra. You're a person, and you deserve to be happy." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I wish it were that simple," she whispered. Alex reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch tender. "Maybe it isn't simple, but I believe in you, Lyra. You're not just a symbol of the kingdom. You're a person with your own dreams. I can't just stand by and watch you sacrifice everything for a duty you didn't choose." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. Then, finally, she nodded. "You're right," she said softly. "I've been so afraid of what might happen if I choose my own path. But I don't want to live in fear anymore. I want to live for myself, for us." Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't going to be easy, but they had taken the first step together. He pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly. The weight of the world seemed to lift. "If only for a moment. I'll stand by you, no matter what happens," Alex promised. "Together, we can face whatever comes next." As they stood there in the royal garden, the future seemed uncertain, but Alex felt more certain than ever that they could face it as long as they had each other. Later that day, the king summoned them both to the royal court. The atmosphere was tense as they entered, but Alex stood tall beside Lyra, his hand resting gently on hers. The king was seated at the head of the court, his expression stern as always. "I see you've made your decision," the king said, his voice cold and controlled. "You have chosen to defy me, Lyra." Lyra took a deep breath, her voice strong as she addressed her father. "Yes, father. I have made my decision. I will not marry the prince. I choose to marry Alex." The room fell silent, and Alex could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on them. Wasn't sure what would happen next, but he was ready to face whatever came their way. The king's gaze softened, and after what seemed like an eternity, he stood up. "If this is truly your choice, Lyra, then I will not stand in your way. But know this, the path you have chosen will not be easy. There will be consequences for both of you." Lyra nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I understand, Father, but I'm willing to face those consequences. I would rather live my life the way I choose than live in fear of what might happen." Alex's heart swelled with pride as he stood beside her. This was just the beginning of their journey, but together they would find a way to build the future they wanted. This part sets the stage for Lyra and Alex's future together, highlighting their growing resolve and the challenges ahead. Let me know if you'd like to make any changes. Ask Chat